I want to give all praise and glory to Yahweh Bahasham, Yahweh Shai Bahasham Ha Rakah Kwadash. Double honors unto our apostle elders, which ruled Great Millstone well, and which taught us the truth. And Shalom to the hopeful elect of the nation of Israel, Wa Abba Babal. Alright, I'm going to declare the Fair Use Act, the Copyright Act of Section 107, where I'm able to use copyright material for reporting, for edification, for education purposes. Alright, so the term I'm going to emphasize is a fraudulent government. Alright, it says, refers to misuse of public funds or deception for personal, organizational gain, costing the U.S. government billions annually through issues like contract bribery, false billing, and benefit scams, often involving both citizens and corrupt officials, reported via agencies like the GAO or GAO and DOJ, which track and prosecute such crimes. Alright, so today being January 17th, 2026, alright, the year of apostasy and Jacob's trouble. Alright, you have in the United States of America a fraudulent government. Alright, I already declared the Copyright Act, Section 107, allowing me to use copyright material for educational purpose and reporting the truth. And on this video of this channel, which is Crimson Closure, all right, they got this video breaking 25th Amendment invoked. President barricade in White House calls it a coup. And this was just yesterday, January 16th, 2026.
You to stay with me here, because what I'm about to walk you through is genuinely unprecedented in American history, and I don't use that word lightly. I've said it before about things that turned out to be significant but manageable. This is different. At 3:14 this morning Eastern Time, a courier departed the Vice President's residence at the Naval Observatory. The courier was carrying 2 sealed envelopes, one destined for the Speaker of the House, the other for the President pro tempore of the Senate. Inside those envelopes was identical documentation, a single page, signatures from the Vice President and a majority of the sitting cabinet. And that document stated, in the formal language required by the Constitution, that the President of the United States is unable to discharge the powers and duties of the office. If you're just...
All right, so you heard it for yourself. All right, that he was served with these documents, which they invoked the 25th Amendment, pretty much saying that he's some form of disabled and unable to carry out his task as president. So Nero's administration, all right, is fraudulent. All right, so any orders he gives to his hired soldiers, ICE, right, the Ice Cube issue, all right, is all fraudulent, which it tells you the devil comes down with great wrath, knowing that he had but a short time. All right, they're at their end. Revelation 12 and 12. Therefore rejoice, ye heavens, and ye that dwell in them, talking about the apostles and the prophets and the teachers of this truth. Woe to the inhabitants of the earth and of the sea, because it's going to be a nuclear war, World War III. For the devil, the so-called white race, is come down unto you having great wrath, because he knoweth that he had but a short time. We're at the end of the so-called white race ruling. Esau, Edom is their biblical name, and they're the devil the Bible speaks of. Now I'm going to jump up. It says in verse 7, and there was war in heaven, Michael and his angels fought against the dragon, which pertains to the government of the so-called white race. And the dragon fought and his angels with his military. He's going to try to fight against the angels that come with Yahweh Shai. And he's going to make war with the saints, the Israelites that believe in Yahweh Ba'asham Yahushai, and prevailed not. So they're going to lose. All right, they're going to lose their campaign against the Israelites. Talking about the Israelites that are the elect, because there are Israel that are not of Israel. It says, neither was their place found any more in heaven, which they're in heaven right now. Even Donald Trump said that. Nero, the reincarnated Nero, he said that he's not going to make it to heaven. He's in heaven now, flying on the Air Force One. And the great dragon was cast out, that old serpent called the devil and Satan, which the so-called white race was the serpent in the Garden of Eden. They're the devil, the accuser of the Israelite, and Satan, the adversary of the Israelite, which deceiveth the whole world, which they set up false images, right? They set up false images of themselves, deceiving the whole world, which in this time, they want to deceive the world into accepting an implantable microchip, which this is where it's leading. All right, I'm going to show you how it's going to lead to the implantable microchip as it been prophesied before Yahweh Shai's return. All right, the true Messiah, as it is written in the Holy Scriptures, Yahweh Shai is going to come back with the angels and make war with the devil, the so-called white man, and his angels. All right. And it says at the bottom of verse 9 of Revelation 12, he was cast out into the earth. He's going to be put in slavery after the destruction of his kingdom. And his angels were cast out with him, which they're going to lose. All right, they're going to lose World War III. America is going to become a lake of fire via nuclear missiles shot by its allies and enemies, NATO nations, UN nations, and BRIC nations, which Canada just did a deal with China and called it the New World Order. All right, and the reason America is not bombing Canada is because they're a NATO nation, just like Greenland. So NATO would run to the aid of Canada against America. Venezuela, all right, is not a NATO nation. It's a UN nation, so it's lower in rank. But it tells you in the scriptures that they would mingle their seed with the heathen, right, the wicked. Daniel 2 and 40. Let me see. Verse 42, and as the toes of the feet were part of iron and part of clay, so the kingdom shall be partly strong and partly broken. This is why you had a Brexit. All right. So we're at the end of the prophecy given to Nebuchadnezzar, which Daniel broke down. And it was the fall of all these kingdoms that were to come after the fall of the Assyrian Babylonian kingdom, which the prophecy was that the Lord would return at the end of all these heathen ruling, which we're at the end now. We're in the 10 toes, which are the 10 horns on the 7 heads of this beast, which is the European Union, and their teeth is NATO. America is the whore that rides this beast. All right. And it's going to cause America to be turned into a lake of fire. All right. And it's all according to the prophecies of Yahweh when he sends his son Yahweh Shai back. But it will not happen until they make this implantable microchip mandatory for buying and selling worldwide. It says in verse 43, and whereas thou sawest iron mixed with, excuse me, and whereas thou sawest iron mixed with miry clay, they have mingled themselves with the seed of men. So the NATO nations is a so-called white supremacy group of nations, but the UN is the other nations, the heathens, which are mingled with the Edomite, the so-called Caucasian, right? The UN is confederate with the NATO nations and even the BRIC nations, all right? So they mingled, the Edomite, the sons of the wicked, the devil, the so-called white race, have mingled themselves with the other nations against the Israelites. The Israelites are the so-called Negroes, Latinos, and Native American Indians of North America, Central America, South America, and the Caribbeans, which have been scattered throughout the world in slavery. But they shall not cleave one to another, even as iron is not mixed with with clay. And in the days of these kings shall the power of heaven set up a kingdom with the Israelites, starting with Yahushai, and then it goes to King David and the rest of the elect of the nation of Israel, which shall never be destroyed, which they have the intentions to try to destroy us. And this is why Yahweh is going to send his son Yahushai with a host of angels from heaven to fight for us. And the kingdom shall not be left to other people, but it shall break in pieces and consume all these kingdoms, and it shall stand forever. All right? So they're going to make war with the saints, and Yahweh is going to send Yahushai back so that we are not consumed. For as much as thou sawest that the stone was cut out of the mountain without hands, talking about Yahushai's throne, and that it break in pieces the iron, which it comes in judgment, the brass and the clay, the silver and the gold, the great power had made known to the king what shall come to pass hereafter, and the dream is certain, and the interpretation thereof sure, which we have a sure word of prophecy. And if you're an Israelite that believes in Yahweh Ba'asham Yahushai, you would do well if you took heed. 2 Peter 1 verse 19, we have also a more sure word of prophecy, whereunto ye do well that ye take heed, as unto a light that shineth in a dark place, which says truth is the light, which speaks of Yahweh Ba'asham Yahushai by the Holy Spirit, and the light is with the Israelites, until the day dawn and the day star arise in your hearts, which is Yahushai, by the Holy Spirit through the power of Yahweh. Knowing this first, that no prophecy of the Scripture is of any private interpretation. For the prophecy came not in old time by the will of man, but holy men of power spake as they were moved by the Holy Spirit. So these were Israelite men that had visions. They were visited by angels, and those angels gave them visions, and they wrote it down, and these visions are playing out in our time now. All right, I believe it's Isaiah 28 and 9. It says, who shall he teach knowledge, and whom shall he make to understand doctrine? Them that are weaned from the milk and drawn from the breast, which they have a desire for knowledge, right? And the Lord's going to lead you to the truth if you're an Israelite that's ordained to be saved or even condemned, because it's like a net. When you gather fish, you gather good fish and bad fish. And the Lord's going to separate them in the end with the great white throne judgment. And he's going to deliver his elect. And there's even going to be 2/3 of the nation of Israel, which been deceived here in America into worshiping the image of the beast. They want America to continue the beast system, which is covering the earth with wickedness. And they're going to be deceived into accepting an implantable microchip, the mark of the beast. And they're going to be destroyed with it in that nuclear destruction of Babylon the Great and find themselves in a lake of fire. So if you accept that implantable microchip, this is your future. All right? As an Israelite, I'm talking to fuck the heathen. The heathen have nothing. All right? They are nothing. Fuck them. It says, for precept must be upon precept, law upon law, precept upon precept, law upon law, line upon line, line upon line, which you could read a whole chapter, or you could jump, pertaining to the point you're making. You could jump from Old Testament, New Testament, the Apocrypha. It says here a little and there a little. For with stammering lips, which we stutter, sometimes we repeat ourselves, and another tongue, we speak English and Spanish and these different languages. We're not speaking the Hebrew, while he spake to his people, which we prophesy in the language, the modern languages, so that they could understand the Israelites where they've been scattered throughout the world. All right, we're not speaking the Paleo-Hebrew, though we could go back to the Paleo-Hebrew, even this modern Hebrew, and the Latin, the Greek and the Latin, we could use in edification. All right? So we have this truth, all right? And the truth is becoming real in real time. All right?
Joining us right now, hit subscribe immediately. This is not a drill. This is not speculation. This is constitutional machinery activating in real time, and you need to understand exactly what's happening. Section 4 of the 25th Amendment has been invoked for the first time ever. But here's the thing. Here's where this goes from constitutional procedure into genuine crisis. The president is not accepting it. The president is not stepping aside. The president is, according to multiple sources inside the White House, physically barricaded in the residence.
Which they showed you the movie Civil War, right? Which it was prophesied that it'd end like this in Isaiah 19, verse 1, the burden of Egypt, which this is talking about the spiritual Egypt, America. Look at the back of the dollar and the monuments of their capitals. They use the symbols of Egypt. So this is talking about America, all right? Isaiah was in the time after ancient Egypt captivity, all right? He was actually prophesying to the northern kingdom and southern kingdom of the judgment that was going to come upon them through the Assyrian Babylonian Empire. It says, the burden of Egypt, behold, Yahweh rideth upon a swift cloud and shall come into Egypt. So just like he did in the past, he delivered us from ancient Egypt. He's doing the same. He heard our cry and he gives us the prophets like Moses and Aaron. And then there's miracles and plagues, all right, plagues and miracles in the deliverance of the Israelites from the oppression. It says, and the idols of Egypt shall be moved at his presence, and the heart of Egypt shall melt in the midst of it. Eventually, it's going to be destroyed by fire, which is nuclear fire, which I showed you in this image. It's going to melt, all right, and their people are going to be caught up in it. It says, and I will set the Egyptians against the Egyptians, which you have that right now, which, pretty much America's in a civil war. And they shall fight every one against his brother, and every one against his neighbor, city against city, and kingdom against kingdom, which they're also involved in a world war, which they're going to lose World War III and become a lake of fire via nuclear missiles from its allies and enemies. And the spirit of Egypt shall fail, right? There's not going to be any work. Right now, people can't find work in America, right? You can't even go to a job without being harassed. You might disappear, right? Because they might snatch you up and take you to a black site. All right, so the spirit of Egypt is failing in the midst thereof, and I will destroy the counsel thereof, which everyone is going to pretty much not know what to do but the elect. And they shall seek to the idols and to the charmers and to them that have familiar spirits and to the wizards. All right. Which is going to only intensify these things. And the Egyptians, which is another name for the Americans, will I give over into the hand of a cruel lord. This cruel lord is Nero 47, and a fierce king shall rule over them, the king of Babylon, saith the Lord Yahweh of hosts, which it tells you in Isaiah 14 and 1. For Yahweh will have mercy on Jacob and will yet choose Israel and set them in their own land. So this is what we're heading to, us being delivered, translated, and put back into the promised land. And the strangers shall be joined with them, which Israelites been scattered throughout the world, and they're waking up over the internet, hearing these videos, and this is why the devil is going to come down with great wrath, knowing that he had but a short time, because they search all these things out. They document, they use statistics, so they know how many are watching our videos, how many are repeatedly watching our videos, how many are making comments, how many, you know what I'm saying? It says, and they shall cleave to the house of Jacob. And this is why the devil's upset, the so-called white race, and they're coming down with great wrath, because you got Israelites that are cleaving to the house of Jacob throughout the whole world. And the people shall take them and bring them to their place, which we're going to take the heathen to captivity, and the house of Israel shall possess them in the land of Yahweh for servants and handmaids. And they shall take them captives, whose captives they were, starting with that so-called white race, Esau, Edom, and it's starting with the elite of the races that are going to be in these billionaire bunkers, whose captives they were, and they shall rule over their oppressors. All right? And it says in verse 3, and it shall come to pass in the day that Yahweh shall give thee rest from thy sorrow and from thy fear and from the hard bondage wherein thou was made to serve, that thou shalt take up this proverb which we prophesy against the king of Babylon, the reincarnated Nero number 47, and say, how had the oppressor ceased, the golden city ceased, which America is no longer America. Yahweh had broken the staff of the wicked and the scepter of the rulers.
Martial law type setting. So we almost out of here, man. This is, I know it sounds like a broken record. We sound like broken records. This is a fulfillment of the time of Jacob's trouble. Jeremiah 30 verse 7. Daniel 12 verse 1. Second Ezra chapter 15. Second Ezra chapter 16. Ultimately, Second Ezra chapter 13. So you got second. The order is Second Ezra chapter 15, Second Ezra chapter 16, then Second Ezra chapter 13, and then also you have Second Ezra. Really, the whole book of Second Ezra. You can read that whole book or listen to it. Second Ezra 4, Second Ezra 9, Second Ezra 8, Second Ezra I mentioned 9, Second Ezra 6. Second Ezra 11 and 12 already took place. Anybody says, oh, that's talking about it. No. Second Ezra chapter 11 and Second Ezra chapter 12 took place already. That is all talking about the Roman Empire. That took place already. Because it happened, this was, Ezra was on the scene about approximately 500 years BCE. And so what he saw was the Roman Empire, which was 500 years in his future. And the only group, Israelite group or company of prophets that could break that down are the men of GMS. Ariel attempted to break it down, but he did not break it down correctly. He said, I think he said it was the Roman Empire, but it's also talking about America. 2nd Ezra chapter 11 and 2nd Ezra chapter 12 has nothing to do with America. It's similar to Daniel chapter 9. Daniel chapter 9 took place already. Christians use Daniel chapter 9 to speak about a rapture and a 7-year tribulation. They don't know what the hell they're talking about. Daniel chapter 9 took place already. Daniel chapter 8 took place already. Daniel chapter 10 took place already. Daniel chapter 11 took place already. Daniel chapter 12 is getting ready to take place, or we're in the midst of it. Let's say 95% of Daniel chapter 2 and Daniel chapter 7 took place already. It's all about prophecies, 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 prophecies. And she said it. She spent retired military. She didn't say what branch, but she said, this is not America. That's what she said. That's what Jesse Ventura said. He said, this is a third world country. This is not America. So anyway, shalom, on to the next.
All right, so as you heard, Apostle Tahar, which his channel is, what is the 666 Mark II GMS Truth, all right, which America is a third world country and it is no longer America, all right, it's a war zone really, and it's only going to intensify till it's a lake of fire. And Yahushua prophesied in Mark 3, verse 24, and if a kingdom be divided against itself, that kingdom cannot stand, which America is divided. And if a house be divided against itself, that house cannot stand. The house of Esau, the so-called white race, are divided, right and left. And if Satan rise up against himself, which is happening in the impeachment of Nero 47, and be divided, he cannot stand but have an end. And we're seeing the end of the so-called white race, and it's going to end in great violence according to biblical prophecy.
To prevent the vice president from entering the grounds and publicly declaring that what has happened is not a constitutional action, but an unlawful coup against a sitting president. Which means right now, at this moment, the United States of America has 2 people claiming to be commander-in-chief. 2 people.
So this makes it fraudulent. It's a fraudulent government, and it's divided, and it's going to end in violence according to biblical prophecy. Now they're going to give the power to Chief Roberts, the Chief Justice Judge Roberts. All right, and we know that prior to Roberts being sworn in, he was pretty much before Biden, and Biden said that he would vote on a digital ID, right? An implantable digital ID. So it says here, Trump's impeachments drew Chief Justice John Roberts into a prominent, albeit largely ceremonial role, as the Constitution requires him to preside over presidential impeachment trials, placing him at the center of political conflict, though Senate rules ultimately allow senators to overrule the procedural decisions, limiting his direct power by highlighting judicial independence against the executive challenges, which Chief Justice John Roberts is part of the judicial system of America, and Nero 47 and JD, he is of the executive branch. Okay? So they're divided. It says, like recent calls from Trump to impeach judges. All right? Which, when you pull this up, all right, 1 month ago, it says the biggest loser in this Supreme Court is Congress. Okay? It says Congress is the Supreme Court's favorite punching bag, and it's about to get decked. The GOP justices are about to hand Trump a victory that they have been dreaming about since he was married to Ivana, which this man, all right, in front of Biden, all right, it was declared that he's going to rule on a digital ID that is implanted into someone's body, which this is what is being set up, all right? It says, as of January 2026, John Roberts remains in a position of power as the Chief Justice of the United States, having led the Supreme Court since 2005. Entering 2026, Roberts continues to navigate a deeply divided political landscape, with his court facing major cases regarding presidential authority, executive power, and the 2026 midterm elections. All right, so this is on C-SPAN. This is from September 12th, 2005. It's Judge Roberts' confirmation. It says here is Vice President, which he became president with Kamala as his vice president, comments on an electronic ID tag, or the microchip. Straight from C-SPAN, our government has been discussing this prior to 2005. Senator Biden says it was already being discussed. He said Judge Roberts will rule during his tenure. This goes with what I posted earlier. Choose for yourselves. You have free, which this is a bunch of bullshit. But the point is, Biden.
Still printing, scanning, and chasing down.
True, judges didn't come before the committee in the past, but it used to be required in the past you needed unanimous consent of the entire Senate to get before the Senate. So, there's some good things and some bad things that have changed. Judge, as you know, there's a genuine intellectual debate going on in our country today over whether the Constitution is going to continue to expand the protections of the right to privacy, continue to empower the federal government to protect the powerless. And it's a big debate. All you got to do is turn on any website, American Enterprise Institute, left, right, center. It's a gigantic debate. Hadn't occurred, as you and I both know and my colleagues know, in the last 70 years. It has not been this contentious. Not just the politics, but the debate, the intellectual debate. For 70 years, there's been a consensus, Judge, on our Supreme Court on these issues of privacy and protecting the powerless. And this consensus has been fully embraced, in my view, by the American people. But there are those who strongly disagree with the consensus, as is their right, and they seek to unravel the consensus. And Judge, you are in the unenviable position, as we talked about in my office, of being right in the middle of this fundamentally important debate. And quite frankly, Judge, we need to know on which side of that divide you stand. For whoever replaces Justice Rehnquist, as well as Justice O'Connor, will play a pivotal role in this debate. And for tens of millions of the American people, this is no academic exercise. For the position you will take in this debate will affect their lives in very real and personal ways, for at least, God willing, the next 3 decades. And there is nothing they can do about it after this moment.
Which this is 20 years ago. all right, we're 2026, all right. So literally, we're in the time of this man ruling for the implantable microchip to be lawful for the United States, and really it's going to be pushed throughout the world that to buy and sell or to ID thyself, you're going to need an implantable microchip, which is the mark of the beast. All right.
Judge, I believe in a constitution as our Supreme Court's first great chief has been mentioned here, about marriage, about family, about religion. There are those who would slash the power of our national government, fragmenting it among the states in the new reading of the 10th and 11th Amendment. Incredibly, some even argue, as you well know, people won't believe this, but some are arguing today in the Constitution Exile group who argue that the national government has no power to deal with what's going on in the Gulf at this moment. Judge, I don't believe in a constitution where individuals could for very long have accomplished what we did had we read it in such a narrow way. Like the founders, I believe our Constitution is as big and as grand and as great as its people. Our constitutional journey did not stop with women being barred from being lawyers, with 10-year-olds working in coal mines, or black kids forced into different schools than white kids. Just because in the Constitution, nowhere does it mention sex discrimination, child labor, segregation. It doesn't mention it. Our constitutional journey did not stop then, and it must not stop now, Judge. And we'll be faced with equally consequential decisions in the 21st century. Can a microscopic tag be implanted in a person's body to track his every movement? There's actual discussion about that. You will rule on that. Mark my words before.
You understand? He's telling him before the Judge Roberts, all right, end of his rule, he will judge whether it is lawful for them to mandate a implantable microchip inside a human body for IDing yourself to their government officials, like the Ice Cube issue, and also for buying and selling.
Can a microscopic tag be implanted in a person's body to track his every movement? There's actual discussion about that. You will rule on that. Mark my words before your tenure is over. Can brain scans be used to determine whether a person is inclined toward criminality or violent behavior? You will rule on that. And Judge, I need to know whether you will be a justice who believes that the constitutional journey must continue to speak to these consequential decisions.
And this was prophesied in the Holy Scriptures, all right, long ago. Revelation 13, I'll start at 15. And he had power, that he is the so-called white race, the Edomite government that rules the world, had power to give life unto the image of the beast. The image of the beast is the beast system, that the image of the beast should both speak and cause that as many as would not worship the image of the beast should be killed. So if you don't want to be part of their beast system and accept that implantable microchip, it's going to be a death sentence. And he causeth all, both small and great, rich and poor, free and bond, to receive a mark in their right hand or in their foreheads, which if you accept that, you will suffer death, all right, because that's going to mark you for death. They're going to try to threaten you with death to get you to accept it. But in fact, accepting that implantable microchip, you're going to end up in the lake of fire. All right, you're going to end up just like this. This is the future of them that accept that implantable microchip, the mark of the beast. It says, and that no man, let me read that one more time, verse 16, and he causeth all, both small and great, rich and poor, free and bond, to receive a mark. But when you go into that word mark, it's charagma and charax, which goes into the cutting of the flesh with a syringe to implant a chip inside your body. Or in their foreheads. Look at what Elon Musk said for 2026. So it says here, yes, Elon Musk, and he's not the only, Edomite with a microchip company. There's many, but he's in the news, all right, as the face of Neuralink. Yes, Elon Musk announced that Neuralink aims to begin high volume production of its brain computer interface chips and transition to nearly fully automated surgical procedures in 2026. All right, so we're in that time for that microchip, the mark of the beast, to be made mandatory for buying and selling, and it's going to lead to them that take it being destroyed by fire. It says in Revelation 13, verse 17, and that no man might buy or sell save he that had the mark. So they're going to require you to have that mark, right? It's going to be pushed through the executive and judicial, which it's already been done through the legislative. That's why there was discussions on it. All right, but it's going to be pushed through the judicial and executive branches of this fraudulent government, which you know as America. It says, and that no man might buy or sell save he that had the mark or the name of the beast or the number of his name. Here is wisdom. Let him that hath understanding count the number of the beast, for it is the number of a man. That is the so-called white man, which is the red devil the Bible speaks of. And his number is 666, which goes back to the Greek alphabet chi xi stigma, which goes into the implanting of the microchip through a syringe, which they done this in the past as Greeks and Romans. They branded and tattooed their slaves. All right, in this modern time, they were given the technology for the barcode system, and now they have encased that barcode into the chip. This is why they'll scan your brain, scan your hand to bring up that barcode system, which in that barcode is 666. Just like on all the products you purchase, the barcode system is on all these products, and when you go to buy it, it scans it. All right, which I've worked in the retail, and now they don't even have to scan every item individually. When they come through the door, every item is already scanned. All right, so that's how it's going to be when you get this implantable microchip. They're going to scan you on the highway. They're going to scan you in the stores. They're going to scan you while you're traveling to show your ID. To make any purchases, they're going to want you to have this implantable microchip, which is going to condemn you to death, all right, and a death by fire. It says in Revelation 14, verse 9, and the third angel followed them, saying with a loud voice, if any man worship the beast in his image and receive his mark in his forehead or in his hand, which is that implantable microchip, the same shall drink of the wine of the wrath of Yahweh Bahasham Yahushai, which is poured out without mixture into the cup of his indignation. And he shall be tormented with fire and brimstone in the presence of the holy angels and in the presence of the Lamb, which I showed you the image, right? They're going to be in the lake of fire. America is going to be turned into a lake of fire via nuclear missiles shot by its allies and enemies, NATO nations, UN nations, BRIC nations. It says in verse 11, and the smoke of their torment ascendeth up forever and ever, and they have no rest day nor night, which they show you in these movies where they accept the implantable microchip, which they're tormented by the chip. All right? It says, who worship the beast in his image, and whosoever receiveth the mark of his name. This is a movie that's good to watch. It says, Implanted 2021. A struggling young woman is implanted with an experimental AI chip. She must fight to survive. All right? So I recommend you watch this movie. And it shows you that they're going to be tormented. See, she's tormented. She was not allowed to rest day nor night. All right? It says in Revelation 14, verse 12, here is the patience of the saints. Here are they that keep the commandments of Yahweh and the faith of Yahushai. Which this is what we do as we wait. We're meditating on the commandments of Yahweh and faith of Yahushai's return. All right, because it is prophesied in the commandments of Yahweh, the salvation of the Israelites. All right.
Orders. Two people asserting the authority of the presidency. And caught directly in the middle of that contradiction is the entire apparatus of American government, starting with the people who control the nuclear arsenal. All right. Before we go any further, we need to establish exactly what Section 4 of the 25th Amendment actually says and does, because there's a lot of confusion about this, and the confusion matters. The confusion is part of what's creating the crisis. Most people, when they think about the 25th Amendment, they think about presidential succession. The president dies, the vice president takes over. That's Section 1. Simple, clear, we've used it. Section 4 is something else entirely. Section 4 was written for a scenario that the framers of this amendment hoped would never actually occur. It was designed for the moment when a president is alive, is conscious, is asserting his authority, but the people closest to him, the vice president and the cabinet, have concluded that he cannot or should not continue to wield presidential power. Maybe he's had a stroke and can't communicate. Maybe he's undergone surgery and is incapacitated. Or, and this is the difficult part, maybe those around him have determined that his judgment has become so compromised, so dangerous, that the republic itself is at risk. Under Section 4, the vice president and a majority of cabinet members, that's 8 signatures, can transmit a written declaration to Congress stating that the president is unable to discharge the powers and duties of his office. The moment the
president, there are a few decisions more important than nominating leaders of integrity and good judgment to hold trusted positions in public office. And few of those trusted positions are more important than the chairman of the Federal Reserve. Accordingly, it is my pleasure and my honor to announce my nomination of Jerome Powell to be the next chairman of the Federal Reserve. Congratulations, Jay.
Thank you, Mr. President.
I think he does a terrible job. He's costing us a lot of money. He's a terrible Fed chair. I was surprised he was appointed. I was surprised, frankly, that Biden put him in and extended him, but they did. He's not doing the right job. We should be saving $1 trillion a year in interest. You know, when he talks about cost, we should be saving, think of it, $1 trillion a year. Add that with the tariffs and everything else. But he just doesn't want. He's a knucklehead. As president,
with impeachment articles and the prospect of imprisonment, and both of the, all right, Trump is dealing with impeachment articles and the prospect of imprisonment. And both of these situations are developing at exactly the same time. And that's a massive convergence that has the potential to alter everything. Impeachment articles have been submitted in the House detailing 7 separate counts. There are articles addressing obstruction, articles on taking congressional authority, and even an article specifically concerning tyranny. Tyranny. The House is formally charging Trump with trying to institute tyrannical governance.
All right, so as you heard, he's being impeached pertaining to even tyranny. All right, and this is prophesied. It says in Isaiah 14, which I've read already, but I'm going to read it in the NLT, verse 4, you will taunt the king of Babylon, which is Nero 47. You will say the mighty man has been destroyed. Yes, your insolence is ended. Insolence is someone that's not listening to a higher power. For Yahweh has crushed your wicked power and broken your evil rule. You struck the people with endless blows of rage and held the nations in your angry grip with unrelenting tyranny. See? So this is what's happening under the so-called white race, and this is why these things are happening. And it's going to end with the Edomites' kingdom becoming a nuclear lake of fire. All right, it is prophesied America will become a nuclear lake of fire via nuclear missile that is shot by its allies and enemies after they make the implantable microchip mandatory for buying and selling, which they're going to use death to threaten that if you don't accept it, they'll put you to death. But in fact, that will condemn you, all right, to death, and you will be in that lake of fire, that nuclear destruction here in America, pertaining to the Israelites that take it. All right? The heathen, fuck the heathen. All right? They have no salvation. This warning is really for the Israelites. All right? For them to repent before this judgment is to take place. It says in Zephaniah 2, Verse 1, gather yourselves together, yea, gather together, O nation not desired, which are the Israelites, and you're supposed to repent and fall back into order, being an Israelite that serves Yahweh Ba'asham, Yahushai. Before the decree bring forth, before the day pass as the chaff, before the fierce anger of Yahweh come upon you, before the day of Yahweh's anger come upon you, seek ye Yahweh, all ye meek of the earth, which have wrought his judgment. Seek righteousness, seek meekness. It may be ye shall be hid in the day of Yahweh's anger, which he's going to pour out his his wrath with fury, no mercy. All right?
Leadership. Presidential power transfers to the vice president, not after a vote, not after a hearing, not after judicial review. Immediately, like flipping a circuit breaker. That transfer occurred at 3:14 a.m. this morning. Constitutionally, legally, the vice president became acting president at that moment. But the Constitution also gives the president a countermove. If the president transmits his own written declaration to Congress asserting that he is able to serve, his powers are restored. Unless within 4 days, the vice president and cabinet send a second declaration disputing that claim. If they do, the whole thing goes to Congress for resolution. We are in the initial phase of this. The declaration has been delivered. The president has not yet submitted his counter declaration. But sources say that letter is being drafted right now. Here's some history that matters. In October 1919, President Woodrow Wilson suffered a massive stroke. He was partially paralyzed, his speech was impaired, his cognitive function was significantly diminished, and for the remaining 17 months of his presidency, the American people were essentially lied to about the condition of their president. Wilson's wife, Edith Wilson, controlled access to him completely. She decided which documents reached him. She filtered which advisors could see him. She effectively made decisions on his behalf while maintaining the fiction that he was governing. When the truth eventually emerged, it horrified lawmakers. The idea that the presidency could be held hostage by a medical crisis, that there was no constitutional mechanism to address a president who was alive but incapable, became a genuine concern. That concern intensified after President Kennedy's assassination. What if Kennedy had survived Dallas but been left in a persistent vegetative state? What if a president suffered a heart attack during a nuclear crisis and couldn't communicate but also couldn't be replaced? The 25th Amendment was ratified in 1967 specifically to address those scenarios. It was meant to ensure continuity of government. It was meant to ensure that the country would never be left without a functioning chief executive. But here's what the framers of that amendment assumed. They assumed good faith. They assumed that if the cabinet took the extraordinary step of declaring a president unable to serve, the president would recognize the gravity of the situation and cooperate with the constitutional process. They did not anticipate this. They did not anticipate a president who would look at the Constitution and declare that it doesn't apply to him. Smash that like button right now if you understand the stakes of what we're witnessing. This engagement matters. It determines whether this information reaches people who need to see it. Let me tell you what we're hearing from inside the White House right now. Multiple sources are describing a building in complete disarray. Staff members are openly weeping in hallways. Some are packing boxes. Others are feeding documents into shredders. The chief of staff, who reportedly refused to sign the Section 4 declaration, is now running a communications operation aimed at framing this entire event as an illegal seizure of power.
Which I recommend you watch the movie Civil War. And in the movie Civil War, they showed that. All right, they showed them shredding papers. They showed them trying to get out of there and escape. They showed them doing all these things in this movie Civil War. Okay, which eventually led to the P being deleted. All right, but it shows you them trying to escape, but they were committing crimes against the people, and the states rose up against the federal government, all right, in civil war, which is happening right now. You have people in different states that do not agree with the policies of the federal government, which the federal government was created for external issues, not eternal. And that's what's happening right now. You're having eternal issues under the federal government. And so it's divided. And I read the scriptures where Yahushua prophesied in Mark 3 that a house divided shall fall. It has an end. And we're witnessing the end of Edom. All right. The end of the so-called white race ruling. And it's going to end in great violence. Shalom to the elect of the nation of Israel. Wa abba.